A high school referee ordered a wrestler to cut off his dreadlocks or forfeit his match. School district administrators say they have seen the video of Andrew Johnson's hair being cut in the middle of the gym and that they're deeply troubled by it.
"14 months of chaos, and we're doing a bill on hair." I think the American people expect more from their Congress, expect more from their elected representatives, and I hope that we can actually focus on the things that matter to the American people.
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Louis Gohmert, I am for the House, and Mr. Gohmert will vote nay on H.R. 211-16, the bad hair bill.
Nobody should have to sacrifice their time, their money, and the health of their hair for the sake of complying with racist standards of professionalism.
It's a statement to say, we are not going to tolerate discrimination in any form.
On today's Justice for All, the Crown Act. Welcome everyone, I'm Tammy Fields. We're broadcasting from Studio Neve Beauty Babes Bar. We thank you again for joining us. So what is the Crown Act? We invited Florida State Representative Camilla Brown to talk to us more about it. I know a lot of people have likely never heard of it. Tell us more, and welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me here to have this conversation. But the Crown Act is a bill that we have sponsored. It's a national initiative where we are looking to, again, normalize or update some of the hair discrimination laws that have really affected particularly African American people and people of color.
Now I know this stands for creating a respectful, open world for natural hair. A lot of people ask the question, what are you talking about? You can wear your hair however you want, can't you?
Well, it should be that, but what we have done is sort of focused what is proper as it relates to the way you wear your hair to European standards. We, years ago, of course, at the federal level, there were hair discrimination acts that were put in place, but it specifically dealt with the discrimination of afros. Now, natural hair comes in various states and more protective styles. So you may have standards such as braids, or wear wigs, or weave, or twist, or locks. Those are some of the standards that we have that are more modern ways of wearing natural hair.
You have found there have been instances where people have not felt welcome wearing their hair in its natural state.
Absolutely. What we have seen, not just here in Florida, but just throughout this country, where there has been injustices done within housing discrimination, whether or not a person can apply for an apartment or receive a home or mortgage in a particular place. We've seen within a workplace where women in particular have not been able to move up, or men who wear their hair in locks not receive jobs. We've seen throughout this country, but even just particularly here in Florida, where we've had several students unable to go to school, being whether it's expulsion or participating in an activity at school, unable to do that because their hair is within a natural state.
Tell us about where this is when it comes. We know the session is over now. Mm-hmm. This has had like an uphill battle.
Absolutely. We have sponsored this particular bill, and it's come in different forms. But let's say we've started with the Crown Act here in Florida about 3-4 years ago. It typically is provided to a committee that sort of is where bills go to die, and to basically not be heard in a committee. And so what we have done is, despite just the legislature's appetite in hearing it in the House, we've done various initiatives surrounding just the importance and educating folks, why this bill is so important and why it needs to pass.
Do you have a personal experience to why of all of the things that you could be passionate about, and I know that you're passionate about a lot of different things, but why is this one that's at the top of the list?
Well, I feel specifically it should not stifle a person. You should not be judged basically by your hair and the choice that you make to wear your hair in a natural and healthy state. And again, it goes to just plain out ignorance as to judging a person based off of their hair. We have seen where, it's a health issue. It's a health inequity, but even also just economically, it has really affected minority folks. Me in Tallahassee, I've kind of focused a lot on sort of minority issues, but also, again, just the education of it. We had specifically in the district several students who just babies, kindergarten, headed to school and have been turned away at the school door and wasn't able to return until their locks or their twists were removed from their head. And to me, again, that does not distinct whether or not that child is deserving for one or capable of getting an education. And so we have to do something with this. Again, it's a choice, and it is the way. It's a part of African American culture, and a lot of times we tend to exclude cultural issues when it comes to inclusion, but also just standards or regular rights that a person should have to be able to fit in.
How will you continue to try to move this forward so that you can get some traction?
Well, we've had Black Girls Day at the Capitol there in Tallahassee, where we invite numerous amounts of girls, women, to kind of share their story. And each of them during this time, they get the opportunity to lobby their legislators. We've had girls from South Florida, from Tampa, from Jacksonville, even right here in our Orlando area that will come to Tallahassee each year. We've had sororities and fraternities who have done their part with trying to amplify this conversation and making sure, these conversations are not only happening in Tallahassee, but even in some workplaces. And we've seen that amplifying and advocacy work. We've seen, locally here, our largest employer, Disney, who took the initiative without Tallahassee telling them to change, their laws or rules and acceptance around many of their employees. We've seen that with many of our companies and corporations, but there still has to be more. And again, it's what we're trying to do is really, modernize, an old law with only afros. We no longer do that. That was, back in the 60s and 70s, my parents wore afros, but we are very diverse in the way we wear our hair. It does not, again, you find it on all educational levels. Various work preferences, young, old, again, it is our culture. And again, we have to be more accepting of each other and how we present ourselves.
All right, Florida State Representative Camia Brown, thank you so much for sharing that with us, what you're doing there at the State House. We appreciate it. We have coming up next a mother's experience, very specifically. She is also an administrator, and you're going to hear how this has really, in fact, impacted her when it comes to hair discrimination. You're watching Justice for All, the Crown Act. Keep it here.
This affects us on a large scale, like I said, mentally and emotionally. And if we can help our children be more confident and trusting in themselves, maybe that fixes a lot of problems that we've created in this country and this world today. Maybe that fixes a lot of those issues.
Justice for All, the Crown Act continues at Studio Neve Beauty Bar Babes. And now we want to continue this conversation, but we would like to specifically talk about how this impacts our kids. Dr. Keisha Rentz is joining us now because you have a personal story when it comes to hair discrimination to share with us. Tell us about it.
My son's a ninth grader at my school where I'm an administrator at, and he
join JRTC his 9th grade year and was told about a month after he was in the program that he had to cut his hair. He was disappointed, of course, because he had time to bond with his friends in the program, and he really didn't want to make the decision to cut his hair. There's a provision in the program that if you aren't able to use or be with the guidelines for the hair, that you can be a participant, and that opportunity was not given to my son until I went to the district. From there, punitive assignments and things were being done. He was made to pick up trash by himself outside with the instructor. I wasn't happy about that at all. He was giving assignments that were at a collegiate level with no accommodations because he has an IEP. And things like that just kept going on until the district and I sat down and talked about what was going on to make them subside.
How was it resolved?
It was resolved as far as the accommodations. We filed a state complaint with my attorney, and they came back and said that they had to correct some of the actions that they were doing.
As a mother, what did you think when your son came home and told you, not that he was picked on at school by another student or something like that, but there was an issue involving his hair?
I wasn't expecting it at first. I spoke to the school myself, being that I was there, just to get a better understanding, and it wasn't received well. And we just continued to ask questions and do research to see what other things that we can do to find loopholes around it. So that's how I found out about the 2% that can participate as a participant instead of a cadet. And that offer wasn't given to us until we brought it to their attention. And they didn't want to do that, so that's when the punitive assignment started.
So where are you now in this whole drama? What's the latest?
The latest is I feel like I'm being retaliated against as an administrator. My job has become uncomfortable, but it's getting better. My son's experience has gotten better as far as being in the program. He likes the program. He's able to participate in the program without a uniform. He still wants to wear a uniform, of course, but we just haven't got to that point yet.
What do you say for people who may watch this and say, hey, it's JROTC, it's military, and when we talk about military and training up young people, there's this standard that we want everyone to respond to and be a part of?
Right. I would say that when I look at the motto or the mission for JRTC, it says that their goal is to create better citizens. And I think my son fits that description. And making him doing assignments like picking up trash isn't following that mission.
Representative Brown, what do you think when you hear these experiences? I know you have heard some before.
Yes, it is so disheartening. Again, just looking at a society where we, at least over the past few years, have looked to do better when it came to diversity, when it has come to inclusion. And it has bothered me as to why something simple as someone's hair, and again, updating laws. Why is it that we are not able to, again, push the needle forward? Just this year, because with this bill, that we've sponsored in the House, is something, like I mentioned, has been done, for several years, but specifically, to me, it was an urgency for our schools. To really, again, focus there. If we can't do it for housing, if that is the holdup, or the workplace and particular employers are the issue, let's at least do it for our kids. But it is so disheartening. But I will tell you, it just will continue to give me more passion to see this thing through. Because again, these are our babies. And it's just, I'm so sorry that he had to go through that.
Now, I know how you feel as a mom, but as an administrator, you look out at this big group of young people. They're learning so much from adults. What is it that you would hope other young people would learn by seeing the struggle that your son has had?
I want them to know that just because it's not their experience, that it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Logan, he is a kind, gentle soul. He's sweet. He's talented, musically inclined. He's an athlete. And everybody has positive things to say about him. And not once have somebody said, but he has locks, and it was an issue. So for that to come up and to stop him from engaging in an educational activity that would help him become a better citizen and follow that motto, it's disheartening.
Your son has not cut his locks, has he?
No.
He refuses to.
He's actually embraced them more. He used to wear them back in a bun 24/7, and now he wears them down.
What made him interested in wearing locks in the first place?
I don't know. He started out with a mohawk, and that's when they came out with these little sponges that separates them, and then
My son has one too.
they just started forming, and then he started doing research on them. I have 3 boys, Demarion and Caleb. They all have locks, and that's how they bond. They take pride in their hair. After they get their hair done, it's almost like they walk different, they feel different, they talk different, and people just don't understand how important it is to somebody like a teenager that's already going through puberty and the change of life. Something as simple or as small or big as hair shouldn't stop them from any opportunity.
So we've heard how this has impacted a mother, but what about her son? Well, next, we're going to hear from Logan. He is here with us. He'll be talking about hair discrimination and the Crown Act. So keep it here. We'll have much more on Justice for All, the Crown Act, from Studio Neve Beauty Bar. Back in a moment.
As a mom of a little girl who also has locks, I want to make sure that she grows up in a space that feels safe for her to be able to express herself, have her hair out in its natural state, and know that it's beautiful, that society does not dictate what's beautiful, what's acceptable, what's professional.
Justice for All, the Crown Act. We are at Studio Neve Beauty Bar, and that is a conversation we continue to have. At this moment, we want to speak about the young man we were just talking about. Logan Rentz is here with us now, and I know, Logan, your mother was talking a little bit about what your experience has been. We want to hear from you. What do you think, looking back on all you've been through, all because of a hairstyle?
Well, when I first heard that I had to cut my hair, I thought that it was a joke. I thought that people were playing around, and then I actually heard it from my teacher, and I was like, I really have to cut my hair? It just didn't feel right. I just felt left out.
JROTC, something you really wanted to do, something you were drawn to, why?
Because I wanted to become an aviation pilot to fly fighter jets and do that one day.
Serve your country, and you want to be able to serve your country wearing locks, I assume.
Yes, I do.
What's this battle been like? I mean, your mom's been with you by your side, but are there times when you felt alone?
Yes, there has been times I felt alone. It's just been stressful. It's been really hard just dealing with this throughout day by day.
Has it gotten any better, Logan, since things have changed and you are able to participate on a more limited capacity? Tell us about it.
It has gotten better throughout, ever since it first started. I can say that I'm able to march with the class and learn new movements, and that's about it.
Dr. Rentz, when you listen to your son, I know you have 3 boys, but I see tears welling up in your eyes.
Yeah.
It's difficult. What are you feeling?
It's just hard to for people not to understand that how important something is to somebody. And you shouldn't limit somebody based off of how they look, especially when it's a good person.
Logan, this has got to be difficult for you. I know you're going to school every single day. Have the students reacted differently towards you because of this?
Yes, they have. I've been called different names. I've bullying constantly every single day, and it's yeah.
Since you've been able to participate, have you seen any differences? Are there any other students now that wear locks or cornrows or their hair differently, or is it pretty much you?
I mean, I'm the only one that has locks in the program, but there are other students who have their hair dyed different colors, and I don't know if that's allowed or not.
That's a good point. I know when I was in high school, that was something we saw often. Kids with different hair colors, red, purple, and it was accepted. What do you think when you're hearing this as a lawmaker, Representative Brown?
Well, definitely.
And you're a mom too, so.
Yes, well, definitely I would say to Logan, thank you. I appreciate you standing up for yourself and standing up for what you believe in. You know, a lot of the back and forth is for us to deal with as adults. And what, you know, as just speaking with your mom, you know, what this does is help me to do my job. And that is as a lawmaker to make sure, again, we change laws and make things easier for our next generation. For you to be able to coexist and to show up your authentic self versus having to compromise that based off of someone else's view. Again, which is discrimination. And from what it sounds like, racial discrimination. So,
Yes, ma'am.
but thank you for doing what you do and remaining who you are.
You're welcome.
Logan, thank you for sharing your story. And Dr. Rentz, thank you very much.
you.
I know it's not easy as a mom, look at your son and to have to talk about that hurt and that pain, but we appreciate it. And we're going to talk more about that hurt and that pain coming up right here on Justice for All, the Crown Act. We're going to speak with a mental health professional about what this can do to our young people and to adults as well. So keep it here.
I just felt very uncomfortable, anxiety, everything else, and just trying to make everything right. Sense of my transitioning back into society, that, you know, what would be the appropriate thing to do. And I cut it.
Wow, he cut his hair. We are back, Studio Neve, Beauty Bar, Justice for All, talking about the Crown Act. And we have guests here who are sharing their opinions with us and details with us that are important. The last segment, very emotional, heartfelt segment, hearing from Logan. But we wanted to bring in Dr. Connor. Dr. Kaya Connor is with University of South Florida's Mental Health Law and Policy Department. Thank you for being here with us too.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an important conversation to have.
Tell me your experience with this. I know some people watching this might think there is a war, there is inflation. Why are you all talking about hair? You say what?
I say that it is recognized that those are important issues and we should be talking about those issues. But the importance of what else is going on in the world doesn't negate the criticality of this issue. It doesn't negate the importance of this issue. Hair discrimination is real, and it comes with devastating consequences for our children, for us as adults, for our communities. Discrimination in any form has significant impacts on health, on mental health. And I think that this is a conversation that is long coming because our community, the African American community, has been experiencing hair discrimination for decades. It's about time we started having this conversation, and the Crown Act needs to be passed across the United States.
What do you think it will take to see momentum to where we're not even having these conversations about how you're wearing your hair to the prom or how you're wearing your hair as a participant in JROTC, that it's not even an issue?
I think that's the goal, right? That one day we're not having to have these conversations. In the meantime, I think probably the most important thing is raising awareness. That's why I think that this segment is so important. I think that these conversations are so critical because the vast majority of folks out there, even members of the African American community, don't realize or haven't even heard of the Crown Act. And other members in other communities don't realize that hair discrimination exists. And why would they if they've never had to personally experience it themselves? I think it can be difficult sometimes for individuals who've not had this experience to fully recognize and appreciate the impact that this can have on an individual, on a child, on a family, on a community. They've not had that experience, and so it can feel so outside of their cultural context that they may not even be able to recognize it, even when it's happening right in front of their face. So we have to share our stories. We have to be willing to talk about our personal experiences, to personalize this, to make it real for other people, and continue to educate folks about the impact of this so that one day it'll just be the beautiful diversity of hairstyles, and there won't be any that are looked at as less than.
We're at Studio Neve Beauty Bar. We're at a place where typically, at least during my lifetime, a beauty shop is a place where you might spend 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours.
Oh, yes.
Getting your hair done. You might leave with little burn marks at the top of your ears, or or in pain from lye burns, from relaxers. I don't think, and I'm not saying that's something that's indicative of this beauty shop, because we just know as a whole the types of things that you have to do in order to have your hair look a certain way.
That's right.
It's not easy, and I'm not so sure that everybody understands that.
They don't. But one thing I can say is we as a people have looked at, again, just look at how far we have come with just the acceptance, or again, not having to have those health risks that comes with again, straightening our hair. You know, all before, we would oftentimes, especially Black women, you know, just with white colleagues, it was, can I touch your hair? When braids were new. Now, again, just based off of, again, the norm, it's becoming more accepting. And so it becomes the question as to why these forms of, again, normality, why is it a hindrance in a person's economics? I mean, this is keeping or preventing people from having homes. We're in the midst of a housing crisis. And for something just so trivial, again, that's normal, you know, why is there so much heartache to where we are unable to, again, simply update our laws to make sure that this discrimination does not happen? That's again, right. It prevents someone from even getting a promotion or certain positions, just even in organizations. Again, not based off of a person's intellectual ability or whether or not they could do something. It is based off of something simple as their hair, something that is coming out of their head that God provided for them. So we have to really, I think it's important that education is provided. And again, when you don't have that experience of sitting in a chair for 4 to 8 hours, or getting your braids up to 10 and 12 hours, when you don't have that experience, again, it's important for you to know so that you're able to understand.
And Dr. Rentz, I bet you, just from an administrator's standpoint, hear those conversations with girls about their hair, and what I heard this term growing up a lot, good hair versus bad hair. Bad hair being my natural hair, but good hair being something different, straight, pressed. Girls still having these conversations? It's still a big deal?
Absolutely, yes, they do. And it even goes deeper than that, just understanding that certain things are done to our hair. Maybe we didn't get it finished, you know, and we started getting it braided, we didn't finish the top, so we need to tie it up. And that's against dress code, you know, and those students are often put in, you know, receive consequences for refusing to take it off because they're not going to let everybody see their hair the way it is. And some people just don't understand that. And we should be past that. It's 2022.
It is.
And I know for you being an administrator, you want those kids in class learning and certainly not segregated.
Not instructional time over here.
Yeah. It's a serious topic. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation today.
Absolutely.
I'm sure people will learn from it, but I do know from a mental health standpoint, it is a big deal. It's a struggle for many.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the things that we recognize but don't think about. We see the immediate behavioral consequence. A child is not allowed to participate in a program, or they're not allowed to be on a team, or someone at a job doesn't get the opportunity for that promotion. But we then don't take the step further to think about the mental health consequences of those experiences. that is traumatic. It is traumatic to be getting a message that who you are in your authentic state is not enough, is not professional, is not accepted. And these are the kinds of messages that our community has been receiving for a very long time and have worked really hard to try to align with a Eurocentric standard of beauty, a Eurocentric standard of what it is to be professional. And we have to make decisions, we have conversations with ourselves about what should I do when presenting myself to the world? Do I go into the office as my authentic self with my natural hair in its glory and risk potential negative ramifications of that? Or do I sacrifice the health of my hair? And do I damage my natural hair in order to fit in? The very fact that we even have to have that question and conversation with ourselves is a problem.
This is a great segue into our next segment too. So we're going to take a break right now and regroup just because of time, because we really want to talk about hair discrimination when it comes to the workplace. Justice for All continues right after this break, everyone. We're talking about the Crown Act. Keep it here.
We're representing the whole population, so we shouldn't have to all look the same. To me, this is neat. To me, this is accepted. To me, this is acceptable to go to work. So I know when you go to a job, you need to carry yourself a certain way, but we also need to be able to express ourselves.
We're at Studio Neve Beauty Bar. We continue the conversation on Justice for All today about the Crown Act. And you hear this young lady talking about, yes, I want to work. And I know that I have to present myself a certain way, but I want to be able to express myself and be myself as well. Employers, though, on the flip side, they have a job to do. And some might say, hey, if we allow this, we have to allow sideburns, and we have to allow, length of hair to be as long as people want it, or different colors, etc. Some people might say, where do we draw the line? What would you say to that, Representative Brown?
I definitely say if it comes to the detriment or the health and safety of that job and that position. I think you've kind of touched on it. Everyone comes into, we're all individuals and we all show up in different ways when we're going to workplaces. Some of us have dark hair. Some of us have bleach blonde hair. Some of us have long, curly, short. But again, when it comes to African Americans, the issue lies is just the nitpicking or what you deem, is not authentic. And again, it goes back to just the education. I think, we all express ourselves very differently, but again, it has nothing to do with, again, the work ethic. Those are the things that should matter. Is, my customer service on point, or, am I doing the jobs and the responsibilities that are listed, within that description that you've provided me. And I think it's important that we focus on that versus whether or not someone's hair is locked or whether it's straight.
Dr. Rentz, there's this song that I love to listen to, India Arie, where she says, I am not my hair. Yes. Is that something you want young people identify with their hair, but know there's more to them than they should be stopped and doors closed because of their hair?
Right. No opportunity should be denied in education because of a student's hair. I just don't see a need for it. It's not fair to the child. And that's not what we send our students to school for. We send them to school to learn, and we tell them to be themselves and to treat others kind and respect others. And we're not doing that by excluding certain ones from certain activities because of their hairstyle. That doesn't interfere with the education, and it's not a distraction. Hair can't be a distraction, not in the classroom.
Dr. Khaya Khan Arno, you're a mom. You've got kids.
I do.
How do you have that conversation with them that your hair is acceptable in the form that it's in?
Yeah, I share some things in common because I also have 3 boys, 3 beautiful black boys, and my youngest son has locks. I think it's just important to send the message that they are good enough just the way that they are, that their hair is beautiful the way that it naturally comes out of their heads, I would be doing the exact same thing that this mom has done if anyone ever discriminated against my child for the way that he chooses to wear his hair. But I also tell him if at some point he wants to cut his locks, that's okay. You know, you should be able to express who you are and yourself authentically through your hair. It's a part of our identity. It is a form of self-expression. And again, it shouldn't have an impact on how one is treated at school or in the workplace.
What kind of advice, you are all professional women, would you give to people in the corporate setting who might say, I just don't get it? Like, I see what you all are saying, but I don't get it. How do I form some policy of equity in my workplace so people do feel comfortable coming to the table no matter what their hair looks like?
Well, I'll definitely say, again, listen. I think a lot of times in order to understand, you must listen, you must see. And just with even just this bill, I guess we've heard it so much on a national level and a national perspective, but when it's in your own backyard, it hits different. And so it's important that as corporations, as organizations, as schools, particularly our private schools where there has not been as much diversity there, it's important that we work again to, when we're also educating our children, it's a part of educating them to be better citizens, is being able to see the beauty in diversity. And it's important that, you know, if you do not have that a part of your organization, it's important that you form a department that deals with that and educating and even listening to some of your co-workers and their experiences. I'm pretty sure everyone can bring a different perspective to the conversation.
I know we're talking about the workforce here, but even when it comes to a school setting, Dr. Rentz, you'd like to see policies that are more inclusive?
Yes, yes. And maybe work with a diversity specialist to understand what's going on. Because if it's not your experience, then maybe you don't get it, and that's understandable. But if you refuse to learn and be open-minded to understand what others are going through, then it becomes a problem.
I think that you all have boys, right?
Yes.
No girls. So, but you probably can remember probably this struggle with your own parents saying, I'm not sure if I'm ready for you to get a relaxer yet. I'm not sure if because there is a time when you don't want children to get the chemicals and the things in their hair to make their hair straight. You want them to keep their hair in its natural state as long as they possibly can. And then sometimes mom will say, this hair is out of control, so it's time. That's a struggle.
It definitely is.
And haircuts are $30. They're running $25 to $30. So if you have these lower income students in the schools, who's helping them get these haircuts?
That's right.
That's a good point, because it's every 2 weeks typically.
Yeah.
That's right.
Depending on how fast your hair grows.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Good point. And Dr. Connor, I know for you even, University of South Florida, typically in college we see things are a little more lax and students are a little more inclusive and understanding on college campuses. But you are apparently see a need for this because you've been an outspoken spokesperson.
Yes, you know, I too have experienced hair discrimination. You know, luckily for me, it wasn't being turned away from an opportunity, but it's the hair discrimination through the vehicle of microaggressions. It's the kill you with 1,000 cuts. It's the comments about, oh, your hair looks like rope or licorice, or that's an interesting style. But when you present with straight hair, it's, oh, your hair looks so beautiful. You look so attractive. You should wear your hair like that more often. That conversation with myself actually led me to permanently damage my natural hair through straightening and chemicals and processing. And so it's really been, I wanted to be outspoken about that and outspoken about my own experience with that, because after doing so, other students, other colleagues have been comfortable sharing their stories as well. And I think that process has allowed for some important conversations, even in a very liberal place like a university setting, where we still do continue to see hair discrimination and discrimination based upon other identities as well.
Very interesting. Thank you, ladies, so much for speaking from the heart. I think we really have learned so much. Again, just by opening the door and having the conversation, I think people can learn a lot. So thank you all. I know it's sharing a lot, so we appreciate it. We have much more to talk about, though, after the break, everyone. So keep it right here on Justice for All as we continue to talk about the Crown Act. Justice for All, the Crown Act continues. We are broadcasting from Studio Neve Beauty Bar. We're glad to be here with a conversation with three great panelists, really sharing not only their experiences, but many of the things that they have done to continue to move the needle to educate people so that they know about natural hair and the Crown Act. Representative Kamiah Brown, coming back to you, is there anything that you want to put out there regarding solutions, things that we can do? You're not in the session right now. So
no, we're not.
What can people do right now to move the needle in a positive way?
Well, definitely, again, the session comes around every 60 days, for 60 days every year. So it's good to have conversations with our young people or those who are affected, whether it's through the schools or through workplace or housing. It's good to uplift those conversations, but also see how you can help, how you can educate yourself. There are, organizations or corporations such as Dove, who has information on this and, toolkits as to how you can help, amplify the voices, and not only just here, but, from a national. Right now, the Crown Act has passed the House, in the federal, and they're still in the legislative session. But how do we get the Senate to adopt that Crown Act or that bill as well, so that we are able to, if we're unable to do it at the state level, we have the federal level where we can pass this great legislation.
Dr. Rentz, when it comes to schools and when it comes to parents and other students even, how can they be advocates?
I would say to reach out to the district and let them know that it's a need for change. Policies are meant to be changed. Just because it's policy doesn't mean it's necessarily right. Times are changing. We've changed policy for other students, for gender differences and other things like that. So we can definitely do it for hair.
Dr. Connor, your thoughts, solutions?
So I think, again, we talked about education, but I think one thing that's important for me are personal conversations. I've had many of them recently with colleagues, and I think that sometimes it's difficult to know the best way to start these conversations. And what's worked for me has been creating a safe space by asking people questions. Have you ever heard of hair discrimination? Do you know what it is? And after giving the definition, I ask, have you ever personally experienced it? And when they say no, I say, well, I have, and I share my story. Or my mother has, my father has, my son has. I share a personal story. And I think that for many individuals, that's the way to get them encapsulated into it. It's the way to increase empathy and compassion among individuals who don't necessarily see the direct impact on this for their own family, self, or community, when they can connect to a personal story for someone that they care about or someone that they work with, that can help move that needle for them. And then I send them to the Crown Act website, where they can then learn more, read the statistics. You can throw statistics and facts at people, but until they're personally invested or connected, it's not going to mean anything. And then after they've seen that, then I come back and start the conversation again. What did you learn? Create a space to be asked questions and to have further conversation and dialogue about it. I think that's important. The other piece I want to mention is that now that there are some of us in spaces who have the freedom to be a little bit more expressive with who we are. I'm a tenure-track professor now. I have stability in that. So I present myself a little bit differently than I did before I had that stability, but it's intentional so that young Black and brown professionals and students that are coming up underneath me can see me as a role model. And they can see me being comfortable expressing myself fully in the workplace, encouraging them to feel comfortable to do the same.
Dr. Connor, thank you very much. Dr. Rentz, thank you. And State Representative Kamiah Brown, thank you as well. I thank all of you all for sharing so freely for this conversation. We really appreciate you. Thank you.
Happy to do it.
That's all the time we have for today. Coming from Studio Neve Beauty Bar, we want to thank you at home for watching Justice for All, the Crown Act. Stay safe, everyone, and stay informed.